So today I want to talk about Easter and Jesus. Yay! So, Jesus. What's this whole Easter egg thing about? Eh? Maybe it's the tomb that Jesus was buried in, and you have to nibble at the Easter egg to symbolize the angel rolling away the stone from the tomb. Well, I've been contemplating Jesus and the resurrection, and I just listened to an epic audiobook called Anna, the Grandmother of Jesus, and it talks about it's a channeled text channeling Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, and she tells her story. So the story goes, from Anna's perspective, that Anna was part of the Essene Brother-Sisterhood, which was a mystery school, basically, or a brother-sisterhood, a conglomeration of people who were studying the mysteries and contemplating the mysteries and connecting to source and bringing forth wisdom from previous generations, and also direct connection to the higher selves, to other realms, to the divine. And these were around Israel or Palestine, Syria, Egypt. One of the well-known kind of centers was called Qumran. And Anna says that she was steeped in the mysteries through the mystery schools, and studied at the Library of Alexandria, which was a famous library which had many scrolls, and she undertook many initiations, and one of the initiations was the initiation into immortality. So she learnt how to regenerate her body, regenerate her cells in her body through a certain type of meditation, or tuning into her higher self or source. She doesn't go into the specifics of that technique, I suppose. But she said that it wasn't for everyone, and there were just a few people who chose to go through the initiation into immortality, and she says that she lived for 600 years. And in her long life, she had many children, and she knew, or she was told, that one of her descendants would give birth to the Messiah. And so a lot of her life was in preparation for that. A lot of her learning was in preparation for being able to pass down knowledge and wisdom to this Messiah, to prepare him from a young age, him or her, and I guess it turned out to be a him. And so when she gave birth to Mary, she had an inkling that Mary would bear the Messiah. And so sure enough, Mary, when Mary was a young girl, in her early teens, she was getting prepared for Immaculate Conception, and a whole bunch of other young women at the same time were being prepared for Immaculate Conception, to conceive through spirit, and not through the seed of a man, which is quite edgy for me to believe. but I can hold that lightly. So a gaggle of girls who were themselves steeped in the wisdom tradition of the Essenes, and who underwent many of their own initiations, were preparing themselves for Immaculate Conception, and none of them knew which one would bear the Messiah. So, it came to be that the stars and the wise men, the three wise men, followed the stars, and it happened to be Mary who gave birth to Jesus, who turned out to be the Messiah. So according to Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, Jesus was born in early April at 1 in the morning in 4 BC, in the Bethlehem in Israel. And so I looked up the astrology chart for early April, 1 in the morning, 4 BC, and I just chose the 2nd of April. And that happens to be the day of the exact opposition of Uranus and Pluto, which is very interesting. So even if Jesus wasn't born on the 2nd of April, even if it was within 2 weeks, even if it was just the first 2 weeks of April, 4 BC, the Uranus-Pluto opposition would be very close to exact, and it happens to be exact on the 2nd of April at 1 in the morning. And that's a very powerful aspect between these two great outer planets. So Pluto represents death, destruction, obsession, and Pluto, this obsession, Pluto gives kind of like a hook to which latches onto something and obsesses over that thing until it utterly destroys it, and then the thing is reborn and gets transformed. So Pluto also represents evolution and power. Okay, so Pluto opposite Uranus, and Uranus represents awakening, sudden change, awakening to soul and the true self and truth coming through. Also revolution and freedom. So to have these two planets opposite each other, comes within the cycle, which begins, as most astrologers see, with their conjunction, which happened 64 years earlier. It's quite a long cycle. So when the two planets oppose, there's this tension between the powers that be. Pluto also represents stored wealth or hoarded wealth or power that's been built up over a long time. And so Uranus opposing that represents like freedom, revolution, breaking away from those power structures. And a lot of what the world was waiting for at that time was a Messiah to free the Jews from the oppression of the Romans, and they were looking to Jesus for that. And Jesus brought awakening and transformation in a different way, but he did also speak up against what the Romans were doing. And he initiated a revolution. For Jesus to be born with that embedded into his psyche, into his being, is very potent, is very powerful. And one of the biggest things I believe Jesus came to show us was through exemplified through the resurrection. So this ability for the soul, or the true self, which is eternal, to actually be so strong in its consciousness or its will, that even after being crucified, Jesus could bring his consciousness back into his dead body and reawaken himself and live again in the flesh, which is an incredible feat. And this, apparently, according to Anna, is an initiation of resurrection, which is potentially available to all of us. So, this day, on Easter Monday, as we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, I would like to bring a contemplation on the resurrection and on the power of that event and the magnitude of that event that sent ripples throughout time and space all the way to us here now 2,000 years later, and to bring awareness that where we are in the current Pluto-Uranus cycle is that the Pluto-Uranus cycle began, this current one, with the conjunction in 1965, which started quite a time of revolution, and the 60s was just a huge time for the world in terms of the sexual revolution, just so many revolutions, right? And I've done another post about that, and a time of awakening, and a time of pushing back against power structures and freedom from tyranny, right? So here we find ourselves. We've had the sextile between Uranus and Pluto in 1997. We had the square in 2015. We're coming up to the trine, which will be when Uranus is in Gemini and Pluto, which has entered into Aquarius, will be trine each other, and that will be happening several times. The conjunctions, the aspects happen several times because of the retrograde motion of the planets. So Uranus, which moves faster than Pluto, will go forwards over that point in which they are aspecting, and then go retrograde again over that point, and then forward over that point. And it often happens with these outer planets that there's either like 3 or 5 or even 7 meetings of these planets in their aspects. So the trines between the two will be happening in 2027. I'm expecting a time of awakening of sorts, and some revolution, and some more feeling of freedom and awakening and soul coming through. And it's also the year that in the human design system they talk about a whole new bunch of souls coming through, or a mutation in the genes of humanity. So that's quite an exciting time. And then the opposition between Pluto and Uranus will happen in 2046. And then several times after that in 2047, 2048. So the opposition, I think, is going to be a really powerful time, and I feel like we're ripening towards that. And what began in the 60s, this current Pluto-Uranus cycle feels like, to me, the biggest, most important Pluto-Uranus cycle which has happened in humanity since the time of Jesus. And I think many people feel that. So it's quite exciting, these times we live in. Yeah. So, and for this Uranus-Pluto opposition, one might expect perhaps another Messiah to be born, but as many of us are feeling into with this Aquarian age, is that it is the return of the Christ is not necessarily about one person holding point for that, but about a collective awakening. Many are feeling the call to enter into soul initiation, or to take a soul initiation at this time. And there are many initiations, and if you're interested, you can find the book Anna the Grandmother of Jesus, or look up the Dead Sea Scrolls, or anything about the Essenes. They were the mystery schools back in the day, 2,000 years ago, who were holding space for these initiations to happen. Yes, and I'm pleased to see that the mystery schools are reappearing around the earth at this time. Yeah. All right. Happy Easter.